Hi everyone, it's Jerry. There was an instructive endgame played recently from the 2013 World Team Championship. It was from round 5 where Yuriy Kryvoruchko of the Ukraine was paired with Baris Esen of Turkey. Let's have a look at it. It comes out of the Sicilian defense, the open Sicilian with d4. This game played just a day or two ago. a6 the knight orf, and with e5 we have now the d5 square being weakened, so black will make sure that there's some minor pieces around to watch over that square. Knight d5 is already threatening two-move combination that will simply crush black. Bishop b6 with tempo, knight c7 to follow. And so knight d4 is clearly coming at a great cost. Knight b d7 develops and defends. And so this move is now a threat. And only now is it defended. Both sides castle. And with this capture, we have our first main change in this position with regard to pawn structure and with regard to minor pieces. White has now the bishop pair. White also has a space advantage. White also has a 4-3 majority on the queen side. Black, on the other hand, has a 4-3 majority on the king side and no longer any worries of frontal pressure against the d6 pawn, since white occupies d5 with a pawn, not a piece, not a knight, not a bishop. And so it's different. If there's a knight here, he can always move out of the way, and then d6 could become an issue. Not the case here. So with knight c5, we have yet another structural change. d5 is now a passed pawn, and with c4, it is connected. A very strong asset for white. And black will do well to blockade this passed pawn as soon as possible. We see that take shape soon enough. First with e4, grab some space with tempo. The queen runs away, but still keeps pressure on that pawn. We don't want this knight thinking about going elsewhere. So bishop d6, and he's going to turn out to be the best defender of the passed pawn. Usually we think of the knight being a very good blockader because, well, why is that the case actually? If we could envision the knight, let's say, getting to d6 successfully without dropping the pawn, what is he doing from d6? Well, certainly blockading. That's the primary function. And on top of it, there's also aggressive intentions, putting pressure on what we can say is the base point of the passed pawn, and maybe even facilitating b5 to put more pressure on the base point of the passed d-pawn. But in this case, it's bishop d6. And, well, why is this a good blockader? Well, it has aggressive intentions. It's not strictly defensive. It has aggressive intentions and maybe even looks to post up on e5 to exert some pressure on the queen side. And maybe the most important, aside from blockading the pawn, is addressing white's queenside majority. White might want to put these pawns to use, a3, b4 ideas, but the bishop is also there to make that a more difficult task, indirectly watching over b4. So now comes f4, and what is the idea behind this? Well, there's an opportunity now for black to, of course, capture e takes f en passant, and we do have that in this game, but what if we don't? Well, what is this pawn doing from f4? It's watching e5. Let's say queen c7 is played. Now, what do we do as black? If these pawns stay on the board, who benefits? And what plans should both sides move forward with? On the white side, it may seem very lashing out type of plan, but there may very well be king h1, rook g1, and getting the g pawn involved to attack the black king, believe it or not. The center is locked up. Playing on the flanks is more likely to occur. It's permitted, we could say. Black, on the other hand, I find it difficult to come up with a constructive plan. Without being able to pivot about on the e5 square, it's difficult to say what black should really be doing. So that is taken into account. Black makes sure that this pawn will not be around to watch over e5. And soon enough, we'll see black pivoting on this square. So we have knight d7. Where is he heading? e5. White rook gets involved. There's pressure on h2. That's defended with g3, not h3. You want to defend against the threat and also control the dark squares. You're also giving your king a light square as a flight square, opposite that bishop of black. And, well, we get the rooks involved. With just one open file, it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise to have both sets of rooks come off, and that's what we have. Knight e5, queen to e4, a5. Black is aiming to just lock down on any idea of whites to get in the majority with the b4 advance. And bishop d2, b6, bishop f4, g6. Keep in mind that this idea of, let's say, instead of b6, if black takes this bishop, well, this isn't mate, but what has just changed? Well, now we have still a very good thing for white. Firstly, let me just still point out this remains a very good thing, a connected pass pawn, and now we have a situation where it's a good bishop versus a not so great bishop on f8. He's also in a pin, and maybe even looking at a more concrete line, there's bishop f4 with d6, d7, and that's going to be big trouble for black. So we don't give up the knight for bishop here. It's b6. It's also g6 here, creating a flight square, and I don't think that I've really shared this ever before in a video. But regarding the bishop pair, what's maybe one other positive when we look at the bishop pair? Normally we view it as a good thing because they can control a lot of squares. They can sweep the board very quickly from one side of the board to the other. They're very efficient in that manner, especially when there's pawns still on both wings, both sides of the board. But maybe another thing that causes the defender of the bishop pair some trouble is determining what kind of flight square to create for the king. In this case, we have g6, but a question might be, why not h6? I'm not sure if I have a great answer to that. Is it better to create a light square as a flight square or a dark square? Because keep in mind, with the bishop pair, either one could be controlling those squares at some point. With g6, we could have this, and maybe there's still ideas of getting the back rank mate. And of course, if h6, well, maybe this one day the bishop can get on this diagonal. So I think it's better in this case. It's not always an easy decision, maybe, defending against the bishop pair, but in this case, maybe black is in some sense reasoning that what's most likely to occur is a dark square bishop exchange. And, well, you want to make sure that it will be then the light square bishop who is not able to control the flight square. Just something to think about when it comes to the bishop pair and creating flight squares if you're the defending side. Anyhow, bishop e7 is played, queen e7, little dancing going on, f6 prepares to get the king involved, and soon enough we end up having this exchange. So now we're presented with an opposite color bishop ending, and white is the side who is still trying to press. This is still present, the passed d pawn that is connected. So how exactly to proceed? Well, first we get out of any potential pin, get the king over to a light square, offering a queen exchange. White avoids that, seeing that they have the safer king, putting pressure on h7, maybe looking to invade somehow, sneak into the black position, and that's what we have. There's also light square weaknesses on the black side, right? If you have pawns primarily on dark squares, that means you are weak on your light squares. There's no pawns around to guard light squares. So white is trying to press, looking to sneak in now, give mate maybe on f7, and black, sensing danger, wants to exchange queens, thinking it will alleviate the pressure. Well, the queens do in fact come off, and we're now presented with this opposite color bishop ending. How exactly to now proceed? Well, what first comes is d6, and well, keep in mind that if some move like this is played, I believe black has absolutely no issue with holding this position to a draw. The king takes up a nice blockade here, and it's difficult to see how white will make great progress. Even if one of these pawns ends up being lost, I think it's a very difficult road ahead to press to convert that into a win. So the pawn advances to d6, and it will be just a single step away from queening soon enough. Bishop d4, here now comes the white king. The idea here is to get all the way up to c6 and grab the b pawn. All right, we have that taking shape. First comes d6. The king is there to defend. This is not a threat against the bishop because we would queen, so the king continues to march. The king continues to march, and just in the nick of time, the king is there to prevent the king from even thinking about grabbing the b pawn. So what do we do now as white? Well, first we back up the bishop, and we do that in a way where we restrict the black pawns from moving, and it's very limiting. It's limiting black in a great way. The king can't go too far. He has to watch both the advance of the passed pawn and this king position to c6. So he can't go too far. And, well, really, there's not too many other moves. It's up to the bishop to do some stuff. Let's see what black comes up with first. Okay, h6. King e6 threatens king to e7, and then the promotion, so the king sneaks back. And now a4. And unfortunately, black is in a position where they can't move their king, as otherwise king here with promotion. And, well, now the bishop is restricted in a way where you have to give up something. And, well, if you go, you have to watch over the pawn and the d6 square, and you cannot do both. So black still watches over d6, but now the king is able to sneak over d6. We save our pawn first, a couple exchanges on the king side, but what's really going to end up happening after some smoke here clears on the queen side, what ends up happening is that it is the queen side that will now have our attention, putting pressure on b6. This pawn will be won. And now, how exactly to proceed for white? Well, there's more than one way to proceed at this point, but what's nice is this little feature to be aware of where you can simply triangulate your king. It's not the only move. You could move your bishop to a square, and then one of these pawns will fall next. Keep in mind, he still can't move because of king c7 with promotion to follow. So we're once again in a position where black is restricted and has to give something up. King first to b7, bishop moves, king c6, bishop back to b4, king b6. It's the same position, but now by doing a little triangulation of the king, it's black's move. And with the next one of these two pawns will fall. Bishop d2, white wins a pawn, and now a very clean technique coming up is to advance the pawn to c6. We have that, and now what do we do from here? If you'd like to, pause the video. I believe there's more than one way to go about a win here, but this, I believe, is the cleanest approach to winning the game for white. So if you'd like to, pause the video, see if you could come up with what white's next move was. Okay, the move was to make a queen and divert the king away from c6, king b6, and now we have a check, king b7. Now this is a threat. There's only one way to defend that, bishop g3. And now the last move of the game, move 65, is the one that makes black simply resign. Can you spot the move? Feel free to pause the video and see what the move is. Okay, the winning move is simply b4, giving up a pawn so that this pawn can march. There's no way to stop both an A and C pawn. What do? If you capture, he continues to march. There is no fear. The bishop is there to stop both black pawns, and there's no way to stop the A pawn. And what else is there to do? If you play in response to b4 bishop here, well, we could always just push and then push and then push again, and there's no way to stop this pawn from queening. So as it stood in this game, after well, what appeared to be an opposite color bishop ending that looked to be holdable to a draw, we had white sneaking in to the queen side, and we saw time and time again a situation where black was restrained and needed to give something up. We also got to see a little bit of a triangulation there in this endgame with the king arriving at a position with the other side, an identical position with the other side, having then the move, having to then give something up. And so at the end of this one, after simply b4, Esen ends up throwing in the towel here. So that's all for this video. As always, I hope you got something out of it. Take care. Bye.